no one gives a shit when I own $200 million of real estate. Like,
how did
good
you
for
do
you?
It? Yeah.
It's like, let me see what it actually takes in the trenches and
Where'd
the journey.
you start? Yeah.
Welcome back to Unfollow the Herd podcast. I'm actually in a brand new studio. So this is the very first episode in this. So if you're not watching this visually, make sure you go down to YouTube and check this out. But in this podcast, I'm super excited. We're going to have a physical therapist that's in the house that has been helping me with a ton of back problems that I've been having. And I thought I literally was at the end of my rope where I needed to do MRIs, surgery, and different things. But I met a guy that actually lives in my small hometown of Thompson. He's a physical therapist for the last 10 years. He's been a professor, actually teaching physical therapy for the last 7. Like I said, lives in my hometown. And really helped me cure a back problem. But I think he's also doing something super special, and he's actually he's leaving probably the golden handcuffs of his industry and working for the big medical providers and going on his own, which is super special. And we're going to dive deep into the business of physical therapy and what you can learn about just this industry as a whole, because I just had skepticism about it right away, but I think you're going to learn a lot in this episode. So Ricky Morgan, appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I hope I didn't get your carpet too dirty here. My shoes are pretty clean, but no, you're good, man. Usually we're interviewing construction guys, but we've been all over the map, right? Like I'm a construction guy, so there's nothing dirty about. What I want to really dive deep though into, we were talking at length before this, which probably we should have recorded, and we did. Maybe we'll put that in here, but. How did you get to physical therapy is really what I want to know first. What do you like about the business? I'll go back and then I'll roll into your story a little bit more. Yeah. So how I got interested in physical therapy, growing up, my cousin actually has cerebral palsy, and I remember, growing up and helping him out, and really enjoyed like helping people kind of reach the goals and be successful, right?
Yeah.
Growing up, played sports, so really interested in athletics and working with athletes and active adults at this point, and that's kind of where I'm at today. So those are the two reasons why I knew I wanted to be in healthcare, and just wasn't really sure which route to go. Initially, actually, I wanted to be a sports medicine doc, and that's kind of how I started my career at UND. And then I quickly realized when I shadowed some physical therapists, I'm like, this is actually what I want to do, to help rehab and get them to reach their goals so they can get back on the court, the field, or back into life activities that they want to get into. And that's kind of what really drove me towards physical therapy. I
like your industry. I didn't know until probably I never had physical therapy. I just avoided the therapy and Googled it.
Yeah, for sure.
Essentially. Yeah. And I know many other people watching this have done the same. What I do like about physical therapy or therapy in general is that it's usually a natural way to get back without surgery and injection, all of the stuff that I want to avoid at all costs, right? Mm-hmm. And you tell me, I think the first time it's like, we're not doing any of that, and we'll work through things. And so I really like that about the industry now that I know a little bit more about it. But what do you, in the business, what made you kind of leap from professor to working for, you probably work for some big medical providers, to actually like jumping in the business?
Right. Yeah. And so going back, most patients, right, feel super skeptical, scared. As a profession, I feel like we don't do a great job educating the community. And that's kind of my goal, is to better educate what we can do to hopefully avoid surgery, injections, painkillers, and all of that. But why did I get into the business side of things? I've always had like a fire within me to be like, hey, I want to run my own business. Right. And I want it to be well-known, successful, and helping people reach their goals, but also helping like create a bridge for people to walk across through that journey to help them reach their goals most people are nervous and skeptical, and they don't want to be spending money on things and regret it, right? I think that's most people's fears, like, oh, geez, I got to put money in and I got to commit to this. But I think once you commit and you finish out a plan of care, like, you're going to be way more successful in achieving your goals. And I think that goes into life in general, is if you want to do something, at some point you just have to commit.
And honestly, like going through PT school and starting out into the profession, I've spent most of my time in private practice, just knowing that that's kind of where I wanted to be. And yeah, I have worked for big healthcare industries as well. And I feel like in the bigger industries, you're just kind of a number. You know, you don't really get to meet those connections with the people you work with, but also your clients. You're just kind of running people through fast and not actually getting to know them on a personal level. And so I wanted that smaller type of feel. But going back to just, hey, make sure you're being committed into whatever it is you want to do. But it did take me 10 years. Like I thought about it in PT school. I want to run my own practice. What does that look like? How do I start? I think that's most people's concern is how do I start and how do I make this thing successful? And like we were discussing a little bit is there's really not like a great, perfect, like, oh yes, I'm now 40 years old. This is the time I'm going to start, right? It's kind of, you got to commit and have a process. Obviously you got a plan.
Yep.
Have strategies and a process that will help you become successful long term.
I like that. I always think my commitment levels. Well, like I got fired from my job, so then I just had to commit to something else.
Yeah, for sure.
Just happened to be in my construction industry again. Everyone asks, how you start. I was 21 though, and I probably was a little naive and had a really strong back at that point.
Just get it done, right?
Better back than I do today for some reason. And yeah, just, a lot of piss and vinegar, I guess, is what I called it, and just gave it hell. So but I don't think I knew right away what I was going to do. I didn't even know at that point I was an entrepreneur. Did you, and I'll ask you, maybe over the last 10 years, when did this, thought start? Like, I don't want to be in the big medical provider. Like, I don't know where in that 10 years that really happened. Like, how'd you know you're an entrepreneur? I
kind of knew right away. I'm just a curious person, man. And I always want to learn. And I think that's what brought me into becoming a professor is I never want to get to a point where I just became stagnant. Right. And when I start getting really like stagnant and comfortable, personally, I feel super uncomfortable because I like to be naturally uncomfortable to grow, as weird as that may sound.
Yeah.
But I think getting in front of students and teaching allowed me to stay on top of my game and provide obviously what I think is good quality PT.
Yeah.
And hopefully can impact those students and then all the patients they come in contact with. That was super powerful to me. And I still really like that. But in any big organization, again, there comes a time where, do you feel valued? Are you just a number? Is it kind of in the process of like, hey, this is what we've always done, and so we're probably not going to change it? And I'm always kind of challenging the status quo. Like, how can we be different?
Okay.
If on your name, if the herd's going one way, you should probably be going the other way. And that's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard for people.
Yeah. Sure. Different people see it different ways. You don't always have to go against the grain. And I don't tell people to do that. Like if everyone's investing in the stock market or whatever the case is, go do something else. It's like, you don't have to do that, but you have to. I think one word you said, the key, and this was a big one in my life because I didn't know right away. I wasn't curious enough. I always wanted to do things bigger, better. I think you had the same attributes. I ended up learning them through mistakes. My curiosity, I think I was maybe a little bit arrogant at the beginning, and I wouldn't ask for help. Wouldn't really I just wasn't that curious. Like, I was curious to the point I wanted to better my business, but I wasn't curious enough to say, how do I actually make a business that operates without me? How do I, how do I actually think different? And I just wasn't brought up that way. You just work in your business. It's essentially you're leaving your 8 to 5 for a 5 to 8. Right. And this is the way life is. And that comes with some freedoms of, not working, but also you're going to be working weekends and you're thinking about it all the time. Right. For sure. So, curiosity is honestly one that pushed me over the hump after I was 5 years in business, made all these stupid mistakes, never had a coach, never had a freaking mentor. No, I was just too arrogant. I was just going to outwork everybody. Yeah. Not a smart path.
Well, and I agree with you. And when I say go against the grain, that may be a bit extreme, right? Yeah. But you should be thinking hey, how can I do what's right for people, right? Yep. And how can I help them meet their goals, but yet educate them the importance of committing to like a plan of care or whatever it is you do in life. But the curious and always wanting to learn, kind of is what really drove me to be like, hey, now's the time to do it. Is there a perfect time? No. Is now the perfect time? I mean, in my life, if you look at it, it's an okay time.
Yeah.
But is it perfect? No.
Right.
I have 4 young boys and
Right.
obviously want to instill in them hard work, right?
Yep.
And hey, whatever's worth doing, isn't necessarily going to be easy.
Right.
And you got to be gritty and you got to get after it and you got to kind of put in some hours before or after the 8 to 5, you know?
Dude, absolutely. You friggin', when you're going to you committed to doing this. I don't know. Was there a comfort level when you committed? Like usually people commit like internally and then they like never actually commit because they wait 5 more years. Was there a comfort level that said, yep, now was the time? Because it's like the economy, you give a reason for any day, anything. And was there a comfort level where you hit or that you knew enough or that you educated yourself enough or that's another level of commitment.
So within this year, big organizations, things are changing, different restrictions, and obviously I don't think any of us really want to be restricted. Like obviously you want to be legal. Yeah. Right. But, unnecessary restrictions I think are frustrating to me. And, this year I felt like, hey, now like a switch went off and I was like, now is the time I'm going. It's go time. Right?
What restriction pissed you off?
I mean, man, how much time do we got? Because there's a lot of things that
regulation and makes everything more expensive and takes longer.
Well, yeah. And it's everybody, it seems like everybody wants a cut, but doesn't want to put the work in. And restrictions as far as like, hey, if you're out doing X, Y, and Z, we want a percentage of this. Yeah. And that's what really just, I'm like, now is probably a good time. Yeah.
I like it.
And honestly, like when you ask me if I'm comfortable, I just had a conversation with maybe a future employee here coming in the next year, I would comfortably say. I just had a conversation and she's like, aren't you nervous? And I said, actually, I'm really at peace right now. Like I'm super comfortable and confident in what we're going to do. And I'm excited for the process.
Well, you can say you're comfortable. What are you most nervous about?
Oh, I think everybody's most nervous about, hey, is this thing going to work? Am I going to fail? But my mindset is, hey, like you said, you can't make all the mistakes yourself, right? Mm-hmm. We're all going to make mistakes, but having a coach or somebody to help mentor and guide you limits that risk. Yeah. And I think puts you on the right path to success. Yeah. But I mean, you hear multiple quotes where it's like, I'm successful now because I've failed. Right. And there's going to be a time where things don't go your way. Yeah. And are you gritty enough to get back up and try something different?
Well, I think, you said the key thing there. It's like you circle around yourself, whether it's coaches, people that know this industry, like, your plan is a successful plan because of other people have probably executed somewhere else in the nation, whatever. Right? We're not reinventing the wheel. We just know that the people around us, they've made probably mistakes and you're getting coached the right way. So I think that's a level of comfort that gets you to over the edge of commitment. Because dude, it's just literally of all I could do a ton of coaching calls and I talk to a bunch of different people. How did you do it? It's like, well, and then I ask them, well, what's your situation? It's like, well, I've been working here and I just want my time freedom back and I want to invest in real estate and I want to retire in 3 years. It's not a good plan. I wouldn't do it. Yeah. That's as much as you preach and hear of time freedom and business or real estate or any industry, it's like, you got to put a lot of grit in order to hit. I think at 5 years, finally my business was to the point where I can actually hire like good people, because I was arrogant. I think if I would have got coaching and help, I could have probably made that in 2 years. That's my biggest regret. But
you learned a lesson, right? Which is fantastic.
Yeah. Like I said, I was younger, so that helped. But I wish there wasn't that many podcasts back when we were 21. Back in 1950. No.
1930. Let's be serious.
In 1930. Yeah. So no, I'm not that old. But I think it's just that's a number one question. It's like how, all they are is on the brink of commitment. They cannot commit. So that's why I'm making this a big deal. I think it can help a lot of people listening to this. It's like circle yourself with the best people that you know where you want to go, and be as curious as you can about everything in that industry. If you do that, there's almost nothing that, at least when you're in the action plan, you'll learn business and taxes and all that crap. It's like, you can learn that, right? Like that is different. But that's totally learnable. YouTube University, whatever.
And I think you need to have, and like you said, you need to have a clear vision.
Yeah.
And you got to have a plan. And sometimes the plan can be hard, but that's where coaching can come in. Mm-hmm. And there's a quote that really sticks with me is, one of them is obviously you can't make all the mistakes yourself, right? Learn from people that have already made the mistakes. But also surround yourself with people that will help support and teach you. And those people that are like, hey, no, that's not a good plan. You need that sometimes, right? And it's a mindset thing. But if you surround yourself with people that support you and help you get on the right path, I think that's super, super beneficial. And I think that, again, coming back to the mistakes, we're going to all make mistakes. But if people are like, hey, that's not a good idea, in 5 years, maybe that's realistic. But you got to know what you want. Like, what do you want? And then make a plan to go get it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's spot on. I think that's, I'm going to roll this into, let's talk about the medical field, just because there's a lot of media on this and we don't have to spend the whole time on this. Cause I want to get to another topic just because I find it fun within the physical therapy world.
Yeah.
But big health issues are medical. I mean, you got foods, you got practice, you got, just the big medical world of, everything's on a, I don't know, you can go to every extreme, right? It's all relates back to the medical field, and we have a lot of unrelated health issues, maybe not necessarily tied to physical therapy, but maybe, talk to me just about what the medical field and how it's changing. Obviously, you already talked about the regulation. You've already talked about different, I think everyone in the medical field doesn't want to be treated like a number, but you almost are. And just because, I don't know, you see traveling nurses and you see like nurses that don't even work for that hospital, but yet they work there for 3 or 4 months and they move on. Right. So I don't know. Talk to me a little bit what, some of the areas in your industry in the medical field.
Yeah. And so, there's a lot of things that go into play, and I think insurance is one of the obstacles, right? And what we're seeing in the physical therapy world is, for sure, I want to be clear that, you should have health insurance, especially for like catastrophic events, of course, right? I think that's important.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing is a lot of restrictions from insurance companies, and I'll hear over and over and over, oh, we have like such good insurance, like the best insurance, right? And I'm like, yeah, but why aren't they covering some of this stuff then? You're paying a premium and you're putting this much money into it. They should be covering some of this.
Right.
But what you're seeing is in the big industry, and I don't want to get too, I could talk about this for a long time, but in the big industry, what you're seeing is these big healthcare systems and insurance companies almost partnering, and they're reimbursing these bigger organizations at a higher rate than smaller clinics, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously if you're running a business based off of insurance alone,
right.
The problem is you're not able to provide a high quality service because the reimbursements are being cut, and each year they get less and less and less. And you see more and more private practice closing the doors because they just can't support like a good quality team, and they can't survive. And that's probably one of the biggest restrictions, frustrations that we're feeling now. Now, don't get me wrong, insurance is super important, especially for catastrophic. But I think what we're going to see in the PT world, sooner rather than later, it's already happening, like across the United States and in different countries, is more of a fee-for-service type of program and giving the patients what they need to help them reach their goals versus letting insurance dictate what we can and can't do. Because right now you're seeing, fortunately or unfortunately, what you're seeing is patients are being seen, but these companies are saying, hey, do X, Y, and Z with this person, even though they may not need it, so they can get a higher reimbursement.
Yeah.
And that's just not right.
I do see some of that.
Like,
why am I doing this? And it's like, we have to, because obviously they know the insurance. I honestly see it with dentists a lot too.
Yeah, and it's not
They're
just
doing all these different
my
levels of
profession,
stuff.
right? It's not just my profession, and you're seeing a lot more people, like even physicians, become like concierge. So they'll go and treat patients, and they'll pay like a monthly concierge fee, and that's happening in the United States. There's just so many avenues and so many things that are going on, but it's a little bit it's interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah, I was just curious how it affected your world. So I think what about, I think my wife and I talk about like the food and the different, do you follow some of that, the nutrition side of things, and what's your view on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think nutrition is huge, right? I think abs are made in the kitchen, not at the gym. I mean, that's serious.
That's why I don't have any.
Same. I love a burger and fries.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But honestly, nutrition, I think, is super important. And obviously, there's a lot of great people that provide advice on it. If you Google, you got to be a little bit skeptical as to what you're listening to, right? But I think a lot of us walking around just to keep it, and I'm not a nutritionist by any means, and I'm not going to pretend to be one, but I think the majority of us walk around dehydrated, right? You think of caffeine and coffee and probably not drinking enough water is like a simple fix. And then typically people probably don't get enough protein throughout the day. I mean,
got it.
And those are two things that I see more common, but
got it.
Definitely pay attention. And I think it's important for a long-term life.
Right. I wanted to roll over. Well, we'll stay in the medical world of why do physical therapists hate chiropractors?
I think that is and there's some smirks, right? But I think that's a super misconception, right? Don't get me wrong. There's probably some that butt heads, but I definitely think there's a time and a place for an adjustment, right? We're going to see the chiro. What we do know as far as like manipulations and adjustments, and what research shows us is it can offer short-term relief and release endorphins, right? So physical therapists can do, we call manipulations, but they're essentially the same thing, right? Same response short-term to kind of reset, if you will. But then how are you going to get that long-term relief? And that's kind of like my ultimate goal is like, hey, reset, strengthen around that area. And hopefully you can get more of that long-term relief and reach your goals. But I think that could be a very like, and I like chiropractors, like I know chiropractors, right? And I think that could get super touchy with a lot of people. But I would say as overall, like not all physical therapists hate chiros. And I would like to say not all chiros hate physios, right? So, but
I think it was just a consensus. Maybe we're searching on that. There's just opposite points of view.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Nothing more than social media likes a huge cracking back on a reel or something.
And every patient's like, I didn't crack. Like I didn't get what you want.
Right.
And, I mean,
so what is it? What's happening? Let's just talk about it. What's happening in a chiropractic visit? And I'm just asking you as a physical therapist. They're manipulating, they're moving.
Yeah.
What's not happening that won't cause a long-term effect?
Well, and that I don't know, being that I'm not a chiropractor, right. I don't know what like a full-on visit, and I would think that it's dependent on where you go to school and what your philosophy is. I think just like the PT world, if you go to a chiro here, Arizona, Florida, anywhere, you're probably going to have a much different experience. And it's same with physical therapy. And that's what's hard is there's so many avenues you can take to help the body heal that I think when people say, hey, I've tried this chiro or I've tried this physical therapist, that doesn't mean that you've exhausted all of your options. It just means that one technique that was used at that time probably wasn't effective for you. And there's other ways you can go about it. And so it's hard for me to comment on like what they're missing because I don't know what every chiro does, right? Yeah. I do know that they'll do adjustments and I do know that can help people feel better. But if you're not getting the long-term relief you want, they're probably taking care of like the symptoms, but not the root cause and the correctives to get that long-term remodeling of tissue or comfort that you want to be.
Well, I think and I don't know that they're reliant on the insurance world, but that's probably most people with back pain or shoulder pain or whatever. I'm guessing the first visit is the chiropractor.
A lot of times people, and they do a great job.
I don't know how many times.
Right?
I mean, what the percentage is, but probably chiropractors a first visit.
Well, especially, and I think, most of my training is in the spine, right? Spine and athletic injuries. And I think that a lot of people, I just think chiros and dentists, right? I think they're two professions that do a really great job at marketing to the public, right? Whereas like in our profession, I feel like a lot of us market to like physicians. Well, if these physicians are in big healthcare organizations, they want to keep you in their organization. Right. So they're probably not going to refer out.
Got it.
Whereas the dentists and chiros, if you think about it, they've kind of, I don't want to say separated themselves, but they've marketed directly to consumer versus to somebody else that hopefully would send you the consumer. You know what I mean?
So. Right. Yeah. Well, what they do to me is they lay me on my side, crack my spine both ways, and then they crack my neck, and then I roll on a table that just rolls my spine, and I'm out of there. It's like a whole it's like they're force feeding you through there. They're working with you for 7-8 minutes. I mean, tops, and they're moving people through very quickly. It's almost like way off topic, but the laser eye, when they correct your vision.
LASIK surgery.
Yeah. And, geez, you go through there. It's every 10 minutes that thing's pumping out a patient.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's $2,400 or $3,000. I don't know, whatever it is. And they just pump them through there. It's just such a process. And I don't think insurance covers any of a LASIK, but I just think I know those guys make a lot of money. They do well. They're very efficient.
Right.
And I was just thinking about the business side of dentists, chiropractors, and maybe those are both insurance related, but then this LASIK is not.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of elective surgeries, right? You think of a lot of different like cosmetics or like plastic surgery, for example. Like it's not medically necessary, but people want it, right? So at the end of the day, it goes back to the question of like, what do you want? It's the same thing for your patients. Like, what's your goal? Like, what do you want to be able to do? And some people are like, oh, be pain-free. It's like, okay, that's an easy part, but there's something more that you want to do and that we want to help you get to. Yeah. And what is it,
Right.
So
I going back to the chiropractor just thing a little bit, it's like I see so many, I just look at the patients, people watch a little bit, and it's just like the construction guy that his back's been bad for 20 years. Yeah. He comes there once a week, twice a week, whatever he does. He gets cracked up. It's a dopamine hit of cracking and makes him feel better for the day or a couple days, and he moves on to the next appointment. I mean, basically, and you just live down that. I just don't know what bugs me the most about that process, and maybe why I was a skepticism of the PT world of therapy, because it's longer term, it's harder. You're actually fixing the problem, but.
And you got to put some work in.
Yeah, you got to put work in. People don't want that, right? They want the LASIK where it's like, oh, I wake up and I see.
They want the pill.
The pill,
better, right?
And that's probably what the medical field's really down to. Everyone wants the pill of
well, you don't have to do much, right?
Right.
And I'm not saying that we're all lazy, but it's one of those things where, hey, if I can get a quick fix and go on with my life, like I want to do the fun things. I don't want to take time to work on eat better or work on my health.
Right.
I want somebody to do something for me quick. I mean, think of Amazon. You can order a package. It can be here like tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's our expectation. That's not how the body heals. Right. And so that's kind of what you're fighting with.
Yeah.
In my world anyways, physical therapy. Yeah.
Yeah. And because I was going to this chiropractor, and kind of the roundabout of the story is I was going to these chiropractors, same thing. I was in the medical world and went into chiropractic, and I tried to get the quick fix, and it's like they had me on this reoccurring program again, no different than anything else. You got to keep going with it. But I just wasn't getting any better. And they didn't really know. I think at some point they just know like, hey, physical therapy is your next step is kind of what they told me to do.
Yeah.
I think
I appreciate that. Right. That's where professions start to work together, which is super powerful.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you see, and let's just go relate that right into the business world. I mean, more gain. Physical therapy. Yeah. Morgan is his last name. So we'll pop that on the
screen. Today.
Jen, pop that on the screen. So then, Morgan, I like it. Because in the physical therapy world, you're working with athletes, probably higher performing people, or people that just want long-term better results, I think, and you want to live pain-free, but also be able to do the things you want. I understand that.
Yeah.
And so in the business world, how do you think, a lot of people watch through business here. If I'm opening a physical therapy place, am I internally maybe thinking to adding a layer of chiropractic that relates into spinal care in the physical therapy world? Maybe you graduate from that process into a long-term care XYZ. I don't know. You know what I mean? How are you setting up your business for success? Give us all the secrets.
All of them. I don't know if I can give them all. Is this paid? No, just kidding. No, I'm joking. But no, it's a great idea, and people are doing it, right? I know businesses out there have chiros as people that work for them, or vice versa, right? I know PTs that are in chiro places, and I think there's definitely a good combination there. So definitely not against it by any means. Where I'm going with the business is. And it's funny where you said physical therapy, high performing individuals, active adults, athletes. Most people think, I only can go to physical therapy if I've had a stroke. My grandpa had a stroke and he went to physical therapy. So therefore I have to have a stroke in order to go to physical therapy, which is, I think, a huge misconception, because we can help, obviously, the active adult get back to whatever it is they want to, right? Or people will be like, I have to have a total hip surgery and then see physical therapy. It's like, no, that's just a misconception. But going back to the business type of model, I'm not opposed to hiring a chiro, but where my business, where I'd like to see it go, is obviously the rehab portion of it. Help people, reduce their pain, right? And then get back to the function that they want to do. But then a big piece, I think, where is missing is that where do you bridge the gap on maintaining what you've gained and continuing to build that strength, which is more of like a exercise based, like setting up a personal program for you to be successful. Yeah. And I guess you could call it personal training, but if you're like so I just became a certified strength and conditioning specialist, where you can program people to help them reach their goals. Now, it doesn't have to be just athletes. It could be, hey, I just want to run a marathon. I want to hike. I want to do X, Y, or Z. And we can create a personalized plan for you. So that's why I'm thinking of the rehab component, the wellness component, where, chiros could fit in, obviously, and PTs could as well. Athletic trainers, right? All of a sudden, you're getting some other professions involved, right? And that's kind of where I'm looking at doing. And then an education piece. So you've all heard that I teach at the university and been a professor, and I enjoy teaching. I enjoy educating people. And so an education piece for the community, where we'll run some workshops and stuff, free workshops for the community. And then also maybe some courses and stuff down the road for physical therapists, because you need so many continuing education credits every so often to stay up to date, right? So that's where my mind's going right now. I'm in the rehab process, right, and starting to move into some of the wellness stuff as well. So you could take it many directions, and it goes back to, what do you want? What do you want it to look like? So.
And how did you just through curiosity kind of discovered this is the path, or maybe it interests you the most too?
Oh yeah. And then just, 10 years in practice, you see it over and over and over again, right? You treat somebody, they meet their goals, and then, okay, I'm good. And then home exercise program starts to fall off, right? And who's holding them accountable? Going back to business coaching, who's holding you accountable to do what you want to do? Right. You told me you want to do X, but who's helping you holding you accountable? Yeah. Because there'll be a point where it's going to get hard. Yeah. And you're going to want to be like, I'm not going to do that today. Yeah.
I can't.
And your coach will be like, no, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And you need somebody to hold you accountable. Yeah. Right. So what I see is you rehab, they reach their goals, and then they don't really have anything to fall into, like a wellness type of program. And I think it's super powerful when somebody understands how you move, and then how you can adapt it to them to continue to stay healthy, ideally for their life. Right?
Got it. Yeah.
So I've seen it over and over again, where you treat somebody and then some months go by and then it came back. And one of the first questions is, hey, how have your exercises been going? Oh, well, I don't really remember what they are. And it's the accountability piece, right? Right. So, seeing it over and over and over again leads me into, hey, I kind of want a wellness piece involved. And then you can help train people to get stronger, or maybe you just want to lose weight, or whatever it may be.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And so is that, I think you were mentioning before that, like, I mean, obviously it comes with affordability. You want to get through your hard physical therapy, actually get better. And then that reoccurring accountability or just communication. Yeah. How do you do that and to keep that somewhat affordable for the consumer, right? Like, because I think that's powerful. Like you can keep, I think we were talking an app. I don't know what your strategy is there, but I mean, it's,
and so many different tiers you could do, right? So you can have different tiers on, like, if people want to go all in, right? You have a tier that costs X amount a month or X amount a year, right? And then you can do like, hey, if you pay up front right away, you get a discount, so some saving some money that way. But obviously you got to make it make sense for the consumer, but also make sense for the business, right? If you're losing money on the program, it's hard to run a business that way, right? Especially if you want to grow and hire great people and keep good people. And so an app came to mind, right? So there's apps, podcasts, all this stuff is happening, but an app I think would be super powerful. That the idea would be able to do like coaching calls through the app. Or like somebody reaches out like, hey, I'm having a problem with X, Y, or Z. Can we just meet real quick? And then it's super convenient. Right. And then if it's like, hey, I need you to come in and let's go through some of this stuff, that's fine. But then they could do some stuff if they have a gym membership somewhere, whether it be with us or somewhere else. They can work on those things and use the app as a guide. Right? But then check in with us and stuff like that. And again, that could go a million different ways, right? We're just kind of in the initial phases of that. So
I would think, so do you think your business, like, does insurance come into play at all? Or do you think you completely, like, I'm just asking because you're getting into the wellness piece. I know that there's some big companies that will provide great insurance, right? And I know if they work out a certain times a week or they do this certain amount of wellness that they'll get a reduction on their insurance premium because they got healthier people working for them. Again, that's not directly reflected to your organization, but it helps out that big organization, maybe gives you a bunch of members. How do you think, that works? Just like does insurance work in your platform?
Sure.
In your future platform?
And I think it definitely could, but I think what people forget is it's so interesting to hear the insurance conversations, because a lot of conversations I have is like, I have the best insurance ever. It's like, that's fantastic. Do you mind me asking, like, what's your deductible? Oh, well, I don't really know. And I don't really know what my insurance covers. And I'm like, well, how's it the best ever if it doesn't cover anything? You know what I mean? Or like, if you're not really like, and I think that's, people have just been so conditioned to just like rely on insurance. And then the powers in the insurance companies and these bigger organizations. Right? And so the point I'm trying to make is, if you have insurance, I think a lot of people forget that you can submit stuff to insurance. Like, I don't have to do that for you. And maybe down the road, I'd be open to doing that for people. But, like in our bills, like, you can submit it to insurance, but there's not a billion, but there's a ton of different insurances, right? And each one has different criteria, and you can see how it's a nightmare running a business trying to, well, this insurance does this. So, and then it gets into like, are we truly giving the people what they need? Or are we letting insurance dictate what
we need? Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Got it.
Because at the end of the day, you got to run a business. You got to pay your people. They have families, right? You get it.
Oh yeah.
And so, where do you draw the line? It's either, do you want to be in business or not? And that's where, like, I think for physical therapy, you're going to see insurance maybe not used as much, but maybe more of like a health savings account. And I know some people have a high deductible with an HSA, and you could use those funds to pay for example, physical therapy.
Right. Got it. Yeah. No, that's okay.
So it's super, like, I could talk through this stuff all day long, but it's super confusing. Like, if you're watching or listening to this, and if you truly think about what is my insurance, and if you don't know what like your out-of-pocket max or your deductible is, you should probably try to look into and understand it a little bit better. And can you only go to one place? Right? And so, you really want to go to this place, but
it's free,
but this bigger health organization that's kind of with insurance, we can do it cheaper. But really, insurance is paying them more. You know what I mean? So it's a big game.
I hate the medical field.
I don't know if I'd hate the medical field, but insurance frustrates me to no end.
Parts of it that, it all, even the food we eat and going, the more it's all in the media, right? Like it's just like
for sure,
people are getting sicker, and you got autism, and you got all these things at extreme rates than they used to be. I think with like Trump going in there, now this FDA, all these foods that not other countries, now are maybe going to not be able to come here or be eaten here, preservative, whatever it is, right? Like it's just, it'll be interesting over the next few years how that changes. I think insurance, because like our insurance premiums, even at my companies, it's like they're up 20% again. And it's like, and next year we plan on it again. It's like, how do you do 20% a year?
And for a business owner, right, it gets expensive.
Oh.
So then what you're seeing some of these businesses do, which is exciting, is partnering with physical therapists or private clinics.
Oh, okay.
Hey, we'll provide your employees X, Y, and Z, and you don't have to put so much in. Now, obviously, I'm not a medical doctor, right? So if they need medical care, like obviously I can't produce it, but there are systems, I shouldn't say systems, but smaller companies partnering with other companies to help them save money on insurance,
right,
and providing a health benefit package for their employees, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that is interesting, because I even find it from ourselves. It's like, how do we find relief? You can re-quote it every year, but it's still like a 15% up every year thing. And then when does this ever stop? Or these companies, you just hook up with I don't know if there's independent medical providers too that do more than physical therapy, but like, when does the time just get an on-staff doctor?
Well, it's
have your own clinic.
It's starting, man. It's starting. And if you think about it, think about this. If you have insurance and you're paying a premium per year, right?
Yeah.
And then let's say you have a high deductible. So you're paying a monthly premium. Let's say you have a $6,500 deductible before they even cover like an 80/20.
Right.
Right. And then how many of you have said, oh, insurance won't cover this? And then you're telling me you have the best insurance.
Yeah.
But they're not covering anything, but they're taking your money. Google some of the richest companies in the world. Health insurance is going to pop up at the top. Yeah. For sure. They're not dumb at running a business.
Oh, no.
But are they truly in it for your goodness, right? Or the betterment of you as a person?
Right. I think
that's where, I can just go on and on and on.
Yeah. We went. Yeah. I think you hit the nail though. It's like, it's out of our control too. It's just,
but we all grew up with insurance. Our parents grew up with insurance.
Yep.
And it's just kind of what we know. Yep. So if your parents brought you to a doc, hey, my stomach hurts. Okay, we're going to Sally. Dr. Sally, right?
Yep.
Okay, my stomach hurts. We're going to Dr. Sally. And from a baby until you're on your own, all you know is my stomach hurts, I'm going to Dr. Sally, right? And maybe we're just conditioned to accept it. Same with insurance and stuff like that, right? We've all had it. It's just what we do. And so what do we say? Oh, yeah, we have great insurance. And who's conditioned you to think that way? The people raking in your money for insurance, right?
Yeah,
if you're being honest, that's what's happening.
Right.
And it's crazy. Yeah.
We could probably go the whole time with just talking about that.
How many hours you got?
Yeah. What's one of your biggest problems right now? You think one of your biggest, I guess it's not going to be a problem, but it may be a future problem of like, you're opening this business, you're taking that leap. What's your biggest hurdle, I guess?
I think it comes back to educating the consumer or the community, right?
Yep.
On first of all, what do physical therapists do? Right. And if you ask 10 of us, we'd probably all have a different answer, right? Much like a chiro. And so we got to have a real clear vision. So what do physical therapists do? Movement experts, I would say musculoskeletal experts, right? And so we understand how the body moves. And if you're having pain, what you can do in the short term to kind of maybe modify, compensate some different movement patterns and then get you back into a better movement pattern that will allow you to do the things you love, right?
What'd you say?
Musculoskeletal experts.
Oh.
Movement experts.
Oh, right? Movement experts. Okay.
Yeah. So the movement system and how our bodies move, movement patterns. Yeah. Should I spell it?
No, don't do that. But just need to know. Movement expert. Okay.
Yeah,
interesting.
And so the hurdle is just getting the community to understand what we can do. Right. And I think that's where I have an open house coming up, workshops coming up. So I'll do like a monthly workshop and it'll be on various different things that people are struggling with, and a free workshop for people to come in and just, listen to their concerns and what they're having troubles with and how we could potentially help them. Right.
Got it.
But I think the consumer, like, I have back pain, Chiro.
Yeah.
Right. I would say most of this world,
90%.
Chiro.
Yeah.
Chiro. And Google, right? I'm Googling it. Not many people are going to drive by a physical therapy clinic unless you've been there before and be like, hey, let's stop in and see what they can do for me.
Yeah.
No, they're Googling, or it comes to a point where they become like, I can't do this and nobody's able to help me. Right. And I just don't want people to feel like they have to live with it for the rest of their lives.
Right.
There are people that are like, well, I'm just going to have to be like this forever. It's like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You're not going to have to be. There's different things we can do.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's eye-opening part of that.
So educating the community is the biggest hurdle. Is like, first of all, where am I at? What do I do? And our goal is to help people basically do the things they love and doing it naturally, right? So avoiding painkillers, injections, surgery to get back to the things they love.
So if someone is doing painkillers, injections, or considering surgery, what would you recommend that person that's been seeing the chiropractor once a week? Maybe they've done physical therapy in the past with no success, or maybe didn't put in the work, or, not saying they just need to put in the work, but what would you tell that person that's considering surgery and right on the brink of that, just to relieve pain?
Yeah. And let me back up. Obviously there's a time and a place for surgery, right? If you're having like, and we're trained to look for this stuff, but if you're having like neurological type of symptoms like foot drop, or if you're unable to control your bowel, bladder, stuff like that, like, okay, that's more of an emergency type of thing. And we're trained to pick up on that stuff.
Okay.
But if you're considering surgery and you just feel stuck, you don't really want it, you're not sure what to do, everybody's telling you should do this, what we offer is a free discovery visit.
Okay.
100% free. Just come in and have a conversation. And if you're like, no, I don't really want to come in, visit our website, right? And we have free resources on there for people to access if they'd like.
Yeah.
As far as like what to do, where to start. But trying to make it so like easy and comfortable for people to have a conversation of like, hey, what are you having troubles with? What is this stopping you from doing? What have you tried? What has been successful? What hasn't been successful? But literally just having a conversation. 100% free, no strings attached. Hey, we want to help get you at least in the right spot.
Right.
Right. And maybe you're thinking of, hey, I should do it with this surgeon. And it's like, listen, for what you're dealing with, I've had really, really good success with patients with this surgeon. Right.
Yeah.
And just that community is helpful, I think.
Yeah, my dad, he's had 2 back surgeries. They've had to, I think they took a certain amount of vertebrates and put a steel, he calls it rebar.
Yeah. Concrete.
Keep this simple.
Yeah.
And then I think he swung softball, golf, something, blew it out. So they had to go up a couple more each way, maybe, limiting his, but the years of concrete really have demolished his. I've done lots of concrete. I'm out of the concrete industry. I still own a concrete business, but I don't actively, pour concrete every day, whatever.
Right.
But CrossFit was the thing that actually hurt me. Just because of not necessarily the CrossFit as the sport. I think if you hold good form, you do things really well. I have a long torso, which means I need a really stable core. That's really what it comes down to in these Olympic lifts and all these different burpees and whatever you can do. And I, ended up hurting my back within this sport. And because you're fatigued when you're doing these, and that's, you always start with good form and then you end with just get the shit done. And the get the shit done is where most of the damage comes from. I find out. So I'm in a weird spot too, I guess, just if you're listening to this, it's like, I did the chiropractic thing for a while. This is since February. We're in November shooting this. So, went through the path of chiropractor twice a week, once a week, whatever it was, did the thing, found some relief, was able to touch my toes and kind of do my thing again, but kept doing CrossFit, kept getting just kind of backtracking. So I couldn't tell whether it was golf because it would hurt after that. It was CrossFit. It would hurt after that. So I was like, started eliminating some things. And then I was like, I didn't want to quit CrossFit because I couldn't tell that it was actually like, they're like, well, what are you doing that's like causing the pain? I was like, I wish I knew that like one thing that was causing the pain. It was just random. It was random a little bit. So I didn't know. And then I was pretty much unhopeful at this point. At the end of the chiropractor, I've never met you. I knew you, but I didn't see you at that time. And I was like, I just want an MRI. Like, well, we need you to do 10 sessions of therapy. Well, that was going to take 2.5 years through our local physical therapist, because they book you every 3 months, which is not often enough,
right?
To actually solve the problem. And I'm just telling you my story of like trying to go through this, because I think it hopefully can help others. But, you know, at the end of the day, ended up not doing the physical therapy. I got the MRI done. I had some doctor drop a note, and got the MRI. I had 3 bulge discs, whatever, and all the language they put in there, right?
A bunch of words you can't pronounce.
Yeah. I don't know if they're bulge or pretty much bulge disc. And that's very common in your industry. That's who you're helping try to fix before it gets to herniated and worse, breaking bone, whatever it is, right? And deformation. So, and then I was walking around Thompson one day, probably at my worst time, and just walking seems to help the back, or seemed to help me, and then found Ricky in his driveway, and we go to the same daycare. We're from Thompson. It's a small town. But anyway, he was able to help me and get me back to CrossFit, which was great. But it was, I've noticed now, it's like, if I want long-term, I haven't healed completely. I don't think at any point where I've been pain-free for 2 weeks or longer,
right?
Only if I'm not doing anything. So now I'm at this point where it's like, I got to start eliminating things, get all the way back healed. And it's going to take time. I'm 36 now, so things take longer, and I have 0 patience. And
right.
So
the whole world,
this is my journey. But right now I'm still in pain a little bit, eliminating CrossFit for a while, you know, golfing still somewhat, and, just trying to eliminate things to hopefully get back to healed. And I don't know, listening to you, I mean, you're kind of telling me, you know, my journey a little bit through you.
Well, and I think some people, a couple of things you said. One is like pain-free, right? And I just want to be clear with people that when you're pain-free, that's great, right? But that doesn't mean your tissues are ready to take on a load, like whether it be pouring concrete, CrossFit, Olympic lifts, playing golf, whatever it may be. Like, getting your pain to go away is great, but those tissues still need to be loaded. And I think that's where they get loaded and strengthened up and get that stability back. That's when you start seeing the long-term, basically carry over, right?
Yeah.
It's when people, where people get into trouble, and then they end up saying, well, chiro doesn't work, PT doesn't work, whatever doesn't work, is because they didn't commit to a plan of care, and they didn't follow through the full plan of care. That end piece of the plan of care, where you get that stability and strengthening, is huge for long term, because you have to remodel those tissues.
Gotcha.
Even though in week 1 or 2 we might be able to shut the pain off, doesn't mean the tissues are ready for that load. You know? And that's where a lot of people, like, that process, it takes time. And again, this world, Amazon tomorrow can have us, whatever, get a hot pack or something.
Oh yeah. Well, I think for me, it's like, I have a weird back at the end of the day, you know, maybe more, I don't know, lumbar type. I'm not sure, whatever, you know more. But at the end of the day, it's like your motor skills, you learn, even if you are in pain and your knee hurts, you walk differently, and you start learning these weird motor skills. I swing a golf club. It's not good on my back how I swing. I need to change the swing. That's not easy. That's like relearning how to write with my left hand almost. Like, I've been doing that same thing for how long? And now I got to change it. And those muscles don't even fire. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, you would make me do weird flip over things. That's like true, crawling like a baby, and like how to not use your
no.
Maybe I can put a video on how I do that, but it's just funny that you forget to fire muscles. They're just not working, and it's just your body just trained not to use them anymore correctly.
And the nervous system, right? And all of us, if we have pain, we change the way we move. And then you change the way you move for so long, that becomes your new normal movement pattern, right? And our goal is to get that movement pattern back to how it was before the injury. But like you said, it takes time.
Right.
It's stored up in your brain, and we got to kind of re-educate your body on how to move. And that doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. You got me doing all sorts of weird exercises, but it is funny. You like rediscover how your body, like what's not moving or working right. You end up figuring out a lot of things about your body in physical therapy, or if your hips aren't aligned, or ankle movement, and everything stems into my back, and my back seems to be the most flexible of it, and
which sounds weird, right? Yeah.
It causes me the most pain.
The path of least resistance, right?
Yeah.
If something's not moving well, something else has to give. So.
Right. So the part that hurts the most is the most flexible, which is
weird.
Sucky.
It's
for
not
me.
Weird. It's normal. But
it's normal.
Weird for people.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to, help people that maybe have back pain that are considering or been to the chiropractor for years. People do this for 10 years without actually going and get the problem. I would tell you that, my skeptical vision of physical therapy, just because it was like, well, I just go in to get the quick fix and I'll leave and just do my thing.
Right.
And hopefully get better. And when that doesn't work, that's kind of where I'm at.
That's when it gets scary, right? Because it's like, oh boy, now what do I do?
Well, yeah. And I was hard on my back. I poured a lot of concrete and did a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have lifted with my back, and lifted incorrectly, maybe for years. I think I like that about CrossFit. I've learned better how to do workouts better.
For sure.
But I'm still not right in all of it. I mean, I record myself and we watch it, and it's still incorrect. And as weird it is to record yourself doing workouts, it's sometimes
you should do it. It's helpful.
Yeah, right. It really can detect why you hurt. And maybe you don't do any exercises. You just do a Peloton, and that's pretty much what I'm down to at this point. Just trying to keep my back healing in a healing state, and trying to get over the hump of where I'm at. So I'll keep documenting my journey, and
do so.
Ricky's going to keep helping me do that. So, well, I got a couple other things that I wanted to mention, or just try to talk about a little bit. I know you have coaches, and I know there's a lot of people watching this. Maybe they're even open their own physical therapy. Maybe it's just a business in general, but curiosity, we've talked about some of the things, but and how long did you know you're an entrepreneur?
Oh gosh. So in PT school, definitely wanted to open a practice. Didn't really know what it entailed, but we had an assignment where we had an administration class where we had to create a business and try to make it function. And I really enjoyed that. And, to be honest, it probably didn't click, until like I started to look back on my past and like, why did I leave this job? Right. And for many reasons, it could be either I'm not being challenged or I'm being too restricted. I have an idea of how I'd like it to look, but I can't do it because that's not their philosophy. And I start to realize like, maybe I should try this thing on my own. And I think the freedom to do what your vision is when I really recognize it. So when I fully understood, probably like these last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know right away, for sure. Yeah.
How do you get, I think there's entrepreneurs out there, and where I'm going with this is they don't have clarity. They want to do all this stuff, right? Like, and there's shiny objects everywhere, it seems like, to entrepreneurs.
For sure. Yeah. And this is where I live. I live in the future, and then I say, hey, I got to come back. In order to get to the future, I got to come back and execute the now.
Right.
But I love to like just be innovative and dream about what this thing's going to look like. Yeah. And I have a super clear vision of what I want it to look like, but I got to bring it back and live in the now.
Do you write it down? How do you cast that, or how do you?
Oh yeah, it's all written down for sure. I'd highly encourage you to write it down.
Gotcha.
One of the best exercises that one of my coaches told me is schedule in your day time to think. And it sounds super weird, and we all want to go. Literally schedule time in your calendar every week. And I would even argue maybe even every day, where you can just think, and not just think for 5 minutes, but think of what you want. The 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you're going to think of like first thing that comes to your mind. And then 10, 20 minutes, it's going to be basically the same thing that came to your mind initially, but maybe a different variation. 30 minutes, still kind of a different variation. But once you get in that 40, 50, 60 minutes, that's when the clarity of what you really want starts to hit you. And you should have a pen and a paper and write down what comes to you. But people don't take the time to just think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no.
And that's huge.
I get my best ideas. Honestly, like reminds me of the book, The Road Less Stupid, one of my favorite by Keith Cunningham. If you haven't read it,
I haven't, no.
It's literally, any business, it will help you. I mean, and it just like sit down, think, you'll thank me later. That's what he says at the end of every chapter.
Yeah. And my coach says when he takes vacations.
Oh yeah.
That's when his best ideas come.
Yeah.
Because he's thinking, obviously with his family and stuff, but he's thinking and he gives him time away from the business, and that's when he gets his best ideas.
Right. I would say that is 100% correct. When you're not, even if you own your own business and there's no whatever, you always get pressures around you of you're not being creative. I always feel like when I'm my busiest at work, I'm my least creative aside. It's just because it's a natural instinct. And then all of a sudden I go on vacation and it's like, I'm just not thinking about work. All I'm thinking about is like,
you're thinking about the business still.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just don't have the pressure of the day on you.
Right.
You got the pressure of or you're just like open and free-minded about things. And I've came up with awesome things. But vacation, is a great time to think of.
And you don't have to take a vacation, but you just got to give yourself time,
right,
to think.
Yeah,
and then know what you want. And what you want, if you have a coach, they can help build clarity on how to get there.
Right.
Because maybe you're like, I want this, but I don't really know where to start, which is the most common question. How do I start?
Yeah. I would say that's when I do coaching, that's the 90% of what I'm getting talked about. It's like I'm writing for them.
Yeah.
Just talk.
Write it down. Yeah.
Right.
Sure. Record it. Do something with it. Yeah.
What's your biggest fear?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think my biggest fear is not being able to watch my kids grow up.
Yeah.
And then I think my biggest fear, and I just saw this recently, is watching them grow up, right? Because there's some really, really great times now.
Yeah.
And then when they grow up, it's fun to see, but then, they're going to move on and have their own families, which is pretty powerful too.
Yeah.
But honestly, like I want to be, and that's another reason why I went into the business, is you have obviously you got to work, but you have the flexibility. Like I want to be at basketball games. I want to be at the football games. I mean, I coach them in baseball and basketball, and I want to be there and able to do that.
Yeah. No, that's a good one.
So not really business related. Definitely. Well, it is, because that's why I'm kind of going into business.
Right.
I can control my schedule.
I think anyone,
but family for sure. Number one.
You're buying your time back, and you're not buying it, but you're doing it. Everyone that watches this wants time freedom. Let's just get that on the table now.
Well, and if we're being honest, true wealth, I used to think was money. How much money in the bank? What I've learned is time. Can't get that back.
No. Yeah. It's, you definitely have to have investments. You have to have the right correction, the
money
right guidance.
It helps.
But your wealth is always shown by time. You know what I mean? Can you go away for a month and you're good? And that's the ultimate. That's what everyone's after. I don't think it's how many zeros are in your bank account. No one.
That helps, obviously.
If you have 10 million versus 100 million, it's like, even 100,000. It's like, again, you just want time. You can't buy it. It goes faster. When you're our age, it even goes faster when you have young kids, because you're busy with them. You're busy with the day. You're busy creating a business.
Yeah.
I do all the same things. I think Shreen, a little bit. I mean, you also, your boys are watching you, right? Like your boys are detecting what you're doing. My kids watch me, every move I make.
Yeah.
The kids wonder what I do.
Well, and you're teaching them concepts that are going to be, and if you're from a school, there's no offense here, but those lessons are going to be way more powerful than some of the stuff they're teaching in school. Yeah. And I hesitate to say that because I think it's still, some of those things are still very important, but finances and investing and like understanding what you want and how to go get it and just find a way.
Yeah.
That I want to instill that in my boys for sure. Yeah.
They, my kids, I get lots of questions. I always love listening to the questions they come home with though. It could be about a Tesla. It could be about an apartment. It could be something, whatever.
Yeah. Anything.
They're asking, well, why would you own the apartment? And then, my kids own some apartments together and whatever. And it's just, they get questions. They're always great questions because I'll answer them for them. And they're like, huh. And then they're like, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And I want to do that.
Yeah.
And so,
For sure.
they just understand like, yeah, what's the revenue? What's the expense? Like, I'm just talking about things that are very, I think when you explain, like anytime we're on camera, like, or whatever, I'm explaining a reel, or if you got to explain something, you got to explain it to a 5-year-old. You cannot explain it to a 5-year-old. You have not done enough due diligence in your own. It's not simple enough yet.
Yeah.
Do not over sophisticate it. And so I love interacting with my kids, and just, if they don't understand it, I don't scratch it. It's like, it's too sophisticated.
Yeah.
And they're bored already, because their attention span is, I think it's shorter now than it even used to be.
Man. And us as adults too, there's been some studies, it's like 12 to 8 to 12 minutes people's attention span,
and it's gone.
That's what this has been, right?
Yeah,
8 to 12 minutes.
We're 9 minutes in. Yeah.
You better still be listening.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna ask you the last question, and then I also want you to say how we can help find you. We're in the local Grand Forks community, and you tell us about everywhere we can find you and how we can get in your ecosystem. But what does unfollow the herd mean to you?
Man, I think it's I think what you're doing is great, and I guess what I'm thinking about is creating a community to help people reach their goals, right? Which we all have goals, and then like we talked about earlier, is some people just don't act on it. And I think if you get anything from this podcast, I think if you commit, whether it be to this podcast, coaching, whatever it may be, surround yourself with people that are successful. And if people that you don't seem, if people are criticizing what you're doing and they're maybe not in that group of people that are successful, you probably shouldn't take that criticism, right? Take advice from people that are successful. Yeah. Take criticism from people that are successful. Yeah. Don't take advice from people that are unsuccessful, Yeah. And I think that what you're doing is building a community of trust and relationships that can help people meet their goals. So I think that's powerful. And I guess community and trust is what kind of comes to mind. Yeah. No, it's a big deal. Who you're surrounding yourself with. If all your advice is from your parents who have never started a business, or you know what I mean, or if that's you listening to this, it's like, or from your great uncle who just doesn't do anything, but yet gives you all the great advice. We all know that guy. Right. And I mean, family, obviously, like, love your family, but if they don't have that experience, like, obviously you don't need to be like disrespectful towards them, but maybe seek out some people that have the experience, right? That have made mistakes. That's probably why I like social media the most. It's like that people might not live in your neighborhood. We're in North Dakota. It's not like there's hundreds of us around here and we get together for coffee on Tuesdays. Right. We should. We should. But I mean, there isn't that many people. And if they were, they're very conservative and everyone's to themselves around here. So it's very hard to do that. But I think social media, you can listen to podcasts of people and think like them. And they're surrounding themselves with good people. So there's multiple ways to do that. And use social media for that. Hopefully you learn something from this podcast as well. But how do we hear more? What do you got going on? Yeah. So as far as hearing more, if you want to learn more, there's, like I said, free resources on my website, which is Morgain, MORGAIN, physicaltherapy.com. So that's my website. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Haven't gone on X yet, but Instagram and Facebook, Morgain Physical Therapy is just my name there. So you can follow us there for different advice, free tips, free resources, just to kind of get a little bit more comfortable with maybe what you're dealing with. Yep. And then obviously, like, you can give us a phone call too. Again, 599-3848 is our phone number. So look at that. Give them a call. Give them a call. Send me an email. Look at that. It can be simple. Or just don't. You go right to my website and ask for a free resource and we'll send it your way. Yeah. Appreciate you, Ricky. Thanks for coming on. Thank you for having me. It was a great time. No, talk soon, buddy. All right.